the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll read the notice. There will be a meeting of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission on Tuesday, February 20th, 2024 at 1 p.m. at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, 11 Hazen Drive, Concord, New Hampshire, 03301. The public is entitled to attend all commission meetings, and when recognized by the chairman, the public may speak on any item on the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to limit public comments to the extent necessary for the orderly conduct of the meeting. We'll move on to action items, which is number 1, approval of January 16th commission meeting. I entertain a motion.
Make the motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to accept the January 16th, 2024 commission minutes. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stands approved. Number 2, consent agenda.
I abstain, I was not here.
You abstained and John abstained.
Yes.
Consent agenda. The following items have been grouped together and noticed as consent agenda items to expedite action on routine matters, which may not require public discussion. The commission members may remove certain items if for further public input or discussion is deemed necessary. I have already removed 2 from the consent agenda. I have removed number 2D and 2E. Those will be up for more discussion. Item 2A, approval to accept the following donations totaling $5,500 made to the Search and Rescue account to assist in purchasing safety equipment and to provide life-saving training to conservation officers. John Barry, $5,000. Diane King, $500 for a total of $5,500. 2B, approval to accept a donation of $7,500 from the New Hampshire chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation to go towards habitat projects on the William B. Ruger Jr. Wildlife Management Area in Croydon, New Hampshire, the Danbury Bog Wildlife Management Area in Danbury, New Hampshire, and the Lamont Wildlife Management Area in Deerfield, New Hampshire. 2C, the approval to accept 3 donations totaling $122.50 from the below individuals for deposit into small gifts and donations account. Stuart Bowden of Santa Conway, $100. June, Jean, and Jonathan Karen of Nashville, New Hampshire, $12.50. Jeremiah and Andrea Beck from Guilford, New Hampshire, $10 for a total of $122.50. Skipping down now to 2F, approval to accept a donation of $50 from the New Hampshire Trappers Association to be used by the Wildlife Division for fur bearer management. 2G, approval to accept a donation of $50 in memory of Ted Peabody from Thomas Angel Santano, I hope I didn't butcher that one, of Darien, New Hampshire for the use in the Wildlife Division for game management. Approval to accept the following donations from the New Hampshire Council of Trout Unlimited, total value of $5,599. Check in the amount of $500. Furman 455 kilowatt watt generator valued at $5,599. And an inflatable raft valued at $4,500. Approval to expend. No, I don't want to do that.
That's separate, yeah.
Yeah. I entertain a motion to accept items 2A, 2B, 2C, 2F, 2G, and 3.
Did you want Diane to speak to 3?
Yeah, we probably better do that. Let's just go to 2G. We'll do
Yes.
2A through 2G, except for 2D and E, those have been removed.
Make a motion to accept items to A, B, C, F, and G.
Do I have a second?
I'll second
Then moved and seconded to accept 2A, 2B, 2C, 2F, and 2G. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those approve, those opposed, stand approved. 3, Diane, how are you? Way back there. Diane's gonna be speaking on that donation from the New Hampshire Council of Trout Unlimited.
So while I'm passing, I'm not passing, just kidding.
4,550.
Here, do that. I can't get that. It's so heavy. So what it is it was a donation, $500 was a check from last month, maybe 2 months ago, not sure. We've been working with Trout Unlimited. The raft was donated initially. We worked through whether or not we could even do what we were thinking of doing. The idea is that we would create a small electrofishing raft that would enable us to sample remote locations that right now we can't get to. So our electrofishing backpacks only go to about 3.5 feet. And obviously you can do wider with more backpacks. But then we jump from there to our electrofishing boat, which I nicknamed 40K because that's what it cost us at the time. But it's a much bigger boat, much larger river systems, can't get into some of these remote places that are demonstrated in the back. So what we're hoping to do is we've been working with this company, ETS, which is the quote on the back, as well as Smith Root, which is the prominent company that we buy our electrofishing backpack units from. Both quotes are very similar, and so we have the donation of the raft and the generator, and then we need these other items in the quote to be able to make our booms and be able to actually turn it into a sampling raft, a research raft. And so just recently, as recent as last week, Matt Carpenter has been working with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service told them that this is something that they could potentially fund. And so Matt has put forward an application to acquire the $19,000 to be able to move forward with the quote. So right now we have the raft, the generator, we need some other parts, and we're hoping it can all be completed in the next few months here for potential research this summer. So right now we have half, and we need obviously more. So that's what it's about. So Trout Unlimited gave us generously the raft and the generator, which we're psyched about, and now we have some work to get the other stuff. But like I said, hopefully, crossing fingers, it'll come from the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Commissioner Green.
I'd like to make a motion to approve and accept a donation from the New Hampshire Council of Trout Unlimited for a total value of $5,599.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. You heard the motion. Is there any further discussion? Diane, I have one question. On the back side it says shocking raft. Not shocking raft.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, shocking raft. Okay, I thought it said stocking raft. My eyesight. Sorry.
It might lead to potential stocking.
I thought you were
We'll
gonna
see.
stock out of that. I was gonna say, boy, I wanna watch that.
Yeah, no. I'm interested to see how the shocking goes. And the bigger picture there, I should note too, is one boom, and that's probably more likely what we're going to do. The raft isn't very big, which actually makes it more user-friendly, believe it or not. So we can get it into areas that we wouldn't normally get into.
Any further discussion?
I got a question. What's the timeline on getting that funding to?
Well, he put in his application last week, so we'll see. It's the Fish and Wildlife Service, never 100% no. So, but soon, I mean, obviously the idea is that it would be soon. I mean, that quote is through June, so we would potentially be able to get it before then.
Okay, good.
Any further questions of Diane? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Going to number 4. Approval to expend $7,000 from the Fisheries Habitat account to pay dam registration fees to the Department of Environmental Services.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
To expend,
Accept.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to expend $7,000 from the Fisheries Habitat account to pay for the dam registration fees to DES. Is there any further discussion?
Eric, I assume that's an annual fee?
Yes.
That is an annual fee, Diane?
Yeah, actually, in the past, historically, the annual fee's been around $5,000. This year, it's $11,775. So that $7,000 is in addition to what the annual amount is that we normally pay. So the total amount this year is $11,775. Not cheap.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Whoops.
Question for Diane. So, in coming years, should we expect that the department will budget for the entire expected cost and that we won't continue to need to draw from the fund to cover these expenses?
It's always paid out of the fund, but we do normally budget it, so it's normally something that's just annual, as you said, and accepted. Obviously, this year, way more than we planned, so the additional money will definitely be budgeted in the future. We'll be budgeting for $12,000 in the upcoming budget.
Commissioner Grover.
So you have one more year of having to do this, it'll be the next budget, so.
One more year of having to register?
No, having to,
Oh, to take out-
draw money, yeah, having to take another vote on it, because we have to pay it next year.
Can I ask why it changed, like why it went up so much?
May I,
Yeah,
Diane?
let Kathy answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Diane is still somewhat new. Actually, the price has not increased at all. We have had to come to you guys every single year. And this past biennium, 24 and 25, it was on our budget tickler, but it got dropped unfortunately through oversight. It's definitely on both my budget tickler and Diane's tickler. The cost has not gone up. It's $27,500 we pay for dam registration fees every year, and that has been consistent.
Thank you.
My apologies. Thank you, Kathy.
No problem.
Eric, just out of curiosity, how many dams does that cover? Is that a number that you have readily available, or
237.
237 dams?
I'm pretty sure it's 237.
So, quick math,
23.
23 into, so a little over $1,000 a dam?
Yeah, it depends on, so like low hazard dams are $400, high hazard dams are $1,500. There's a low hazard one that's $200, so they're all a little different prices depending on the dams.
237 dams that DES handles statewide.
Yeah,
Oh,
You were asking about.
so these are just the fishery dams. That's fishery and hatchery, and then I have another list of dams over here that wildlife has.
to respond to AJ, I think it bears watching. They have a way of increasing these fees unexpectedly. It hits communities a lot too that have water resources. And all of a sudden you get a bill that you did not gross appropriate for. So you're into asking legislation at the local level for more money.
Any further discussion on the motion to expend $7,000 out of the Fisheries Habitat account for dam registration fees to DES? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stands approved. Go up to 2D, the approval to accept the donation of 2 islands totaling 11 plus or minus acres in the Pemigewasset River in Thornton, New Hampshire, from LCJ Holdings, LLC. Jim's going to speak to us about that.
You bet. Actually, yeah, both land donations in one presentation.
Sure, save you going up and down.
Yeah, great. If you don't mind, I'd start with a 240-acre Pincharge property in Mount Vernon. So two potential land conservation opportunities, both land donations. The first one in Mount Vernon, 240 acres, owned or formerly owned by the Pinchards. The Pinchards came to us in 2013. They were trying to settle their estate planning affairs, and they had amassed this 240 acres. They had no heirs, but they wanted to see it conserved in perpetuity. And they shopped it around to different conservation organizations, including Fish and Game, to see which one best fit their values and how they wanted to see the land managed in the future. And they chose Fish and Game. So we entered into a pledge agreement and an enforceable pledge agreement signed by both parties. And both Mr. and Mrs. Pinchard have both passed away, Mrs. last year. So the estate attorney has come to us and said, we're ready to move forward with this donation. So again, 240 acres, you can see where it sits. This is the Francistown Turnpike. So Francistown is north, Mount Vernon is south. This is our Piscataquag Wildlife Management Area. We own in fee. A lot we own in easement. Forest Society easements. Olson A and B are Forest Society easements, and there are several town-owned lots to the right, including Lamson Farm here, which perhaps many of you are familiar with. So it's a very diverse property. It has a mix of hay fields and cornfields, old pasture lands that are now in meadow. Have a big red maple swamp right here, which goes into this farm pond, shrub swamp system here. The forested areas are hemlock hardwood pine, typical of the region. This would be the parking area here. It's a U-shaped parking area. Ready-made. The Meadowlands near the old barn foundation. Barn foundation is a concrete slab. Still a few fences left over. The cornfields, managed by a local farmer. We'd enter into an agricultural agreement with that person once we took ownership. You can see the old pasture here, which is now meadow. That's maintained with periodic mowing. And the hayfield on the bottom right. And one of the hayfields has been left fallow since 2013. We're going to be contacting the farmer to understand what his plans are for that field. And then you got the farm pond and shrub swamp adjacent to that. And there's opportunities for maintaining some young flower habitat, create a feathered edge along those field edges. And there you have it. So this is an opportunity to maintain in perpetuity, add to our system of wildlife management areas, 240 acres for free. And the other benefit of this is that we can appraise this property in today's dollars and use it as match to leverage additional federal funds to conserve additional lands. Should I pause there?
Do you want him to pause? Do you want him to pause or go straight into the?
No.
Go ahead.
Go right in the next one.
Okay, very good. Okay, the next one are two islands in the Pemminger-Wassaw River in the town of Thornton. This is part of the mitigation negotiation associated with the development of the LCJ Land Holdings property, including Owl's Nest Golf Course right here, which they're doing additional houses and condos and additional development up here on a lot that's currently undeveloped. So all of that is owned by LCJ Holdings LLC. So as part of the mitigation negotiations, the non-game program has been able to come to agreement for Fish and Game to acquire these two islands. You can see that the islands are part of a WAP tier 1, highest ranked habitat in the state due to the ecological integrity of that stretch of the river. And you can see the type of habitat that is predominant on those islands. Sparsely vegetated, cobbly with some sand. And this is important habitat for the state endangered cobblestone tiger beetle. and the impetus for the mitigation and the donation. This is the only known population of the tiger beetle in the Pemigewasset River watershed. Only 12 populations known in the eastern U.S., and they favor the type of habitats found on those islands. The other habitat and wildlife benefits associated with those islands, it not only includes that cobble habitat, but it has some shrubland and a small patch of forest, so certainly you'd see migratory songbirds utilizing it during migratory seasons, fur bearers such as mink and otter, and perhaps reptiles such as the wood turtle. So there you have it, 2 land conservation projects, bulk donations.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Commissioner DeVoe?
Are these islands that get completely swollen, the water completely goes over them, they're gone during high water, or?
Not that I've seen from the historic area photos.
Okay, so I can see that's a big chunk of land.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out whether it is on Owl's Nest is the Iron Bridge, and then a little bit further is the other campground above it. I didn't know that, that's great. I was thinking, how's that cobblestone beetle gonna survive getting completely underwater, because I thought they got completely underwater, but I guess I'm mistaken on where they are at. That's great.
Go ahead, John.
Go back to the 240 acres, Jim, and 2 questions, basically.
Want the map,
Does,
John?
I'm sorry?
Want the map?
No, no, it's a general question.
Oh, okay.
Taking this as a gift, the prior owners, did it come with any restrictions on use or how it would be managed?
No.
None whatsoever?
No, I mean, we gave them sort of an outline of the type of management we would do, and we generally have to follow that, but it's typically how we manage our wildlife management areas.
Okay, and the second question, do you have any idea what its real value would be and how you might use that value in terms of general dollars to leverage going forward? You mentioned that it could be...
Yes, we can appraise it at today's dollars.
Has it been appraised?
Do you have a sense, Betsy?
It was appraised by the estate at 400,000, but
Mount Vernon.
it was appraised at the state for about 400,000, maybe a year and a half ago. Just 'cause I'm surprised it's that low.
Yeah, me too. Get it done again.
Oh, yeah, we will.
Yeah,
Yes, we will. Yeah, but how would we leverage that? I mean, we've got several projects that are in mind. We don't have purchase and sales for them yet, but there are several that we have sort of in the works
Yeah.
that I really can't speak of right now because we don't have a purchase and sales.
No, and I understand that, but I just, I was just curious to know if that process had gone that far to have an appraisal that could be used to go after other projects.
Right, once we acquire it, then we can do the appraisal and,
Yep.
yeah.
Mount Vernon, it's gonna be high.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Chris?
Jim, question on the expected management of the property, any extraordinary or extraordinary costs that you see? And thinking, like, is the farm pond impoundment, any management,
no,
anything
no.
like that? Or anything there that we should be aware of in terms of ongoing management of the property costs?
I'll show you here, so. There's an access road right here, it goes to this hayfield. And this access road acts as a dike. And they do have a drop inlet culvert system there that we're gonna have to visit periodically with beavers. That's the biggest issue on this property. There's a little bit of old historic farm dumping that we're gonna have to clean up, but once that's done, we should be good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions of Jim? I got one question, Jim. Title search been done on these 2 properties?
It's been down on Pinchard, not yet on the islands.
Good. If it's not clear, we'll need to know about that, that's all.
Oh, you bet.
Yep. Any further discussion?
Are we still surveying the properties that we're
Oh, yeah.
getting?
We'll survey
surveyed?
Pinchard. We commonly do it as part of the acquisition process when we're buying land, but this is a donation, so we're gonna have to do it after the fact. So we'll do it with either our in-house forces or contract it out.
Any further discussion?
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to accept item 2E for the donation of 240 acre property in Mount Vernon from the estate of Joanne and Roger Pinchat.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the donation of 240 acre property in Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved. Entertain a motion for 2D.
I'll make a motion to approve 2D.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the donation of 2 islands totaling 11 plus or minus acres in the Pemigewasset River in Thornton. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stands accepted. Thank you, Jim. Okay, moving down to number 5, docket number NHFGC 2024-001 in reference to RSA 2064B complaint regarding the Hampshire Fish and Game Commissioner Price, possible appointment of K. Allen Brooke, Senior Assistant Attorney General, and/or an alternate as presiding officer of the hearing. At this time, I would like to make a motion to appoint Senior Assistant Attorney General K. Allen Brooks as the presiding officer of the hearing.
I'll second that motion.
The reason I selected this gentleman is because Attorney General Aslan and Attorney General Lucas represent, Attorney General Aslan represents the department, Lucas represents us. I wanted to be impartial as much as possible, so their supervisor, Alan Brooks, agreed to do that if we so desire. And I certainly hope the commission, this is the first step to put this behind us. So I'd entertain any discussion on the motion. I will ask for raising of the hands on this particular motion. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Thank you, Commissioner Price. Thank you. Okay, going on to Commissioner Attorney Brooks. Are you going to stick around to hear some more of us, or do you want to go back up on the hill?
If you need me here, I will stay. Mark Lucas is here for the entire meeting.
We have our attorney here. If you got other things to do, I don't want to hold you up, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Informational item, financial statement. Everybody got a copy of the financial statement from Kathy? Any discussion on that? She did hand out this just now. Remember, this dealt with licenses. She brought up the discussion on licenses last time, on what licenses sold with when and what. I asked her if she could check our neighboring states, and she did. She checked 5 other states on how we rank with them and the different sales. It's very, very informative, and I think that's going to be very valuable. Thank you, Kathy, for doing that, wherever she is, there she is. Any further discussion on Kathy's statement? I guess you're getting off good, Kathy. Number 2, update on current moose research being conducted by the University of New Hampshire for the Fish and Game Department. Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Henry Jones. I'm the Moose Project leader And I'm going to speak with you just an update on an ongoing research project we have, and it's a collaborative research project between Fish and Game and the University of New Hampshire. So the majority of the work being done on this is done by the professors and students at UNH, and so that is led by Dr. Remington Mall of the Wildlife Monitoring and Management Lab, and his master's student working on this project, Lily Hall. Additionally, a co-investigator is Dr. Michael Pallas, and a research scientist in his lab, Franklin Sullivan. So currently to measure moose abundance, we use the Deer Hunter Survey. And this method or technique was developed or put in place in about 2000. And at that time, we surveyed a large number of deer hunters in northern New Hampshire for their moose observations. How many moose were they seeing? At the same time and in the same area, an aerial survey was flown with a fixed wing plane and a thermal camera on it to count the total number of moose in that area. That combination of surveys allowed us to relate the sighting rate of moose by deer hunters to the total number of moose in the area. And it is used as an index, so it's not supposed to be there are this many moose as a precise measure. It's designed to indicate trend. Is the population going up, down, or other? Yeah, so stable. So we've been using it since 2000 in that way. However, it's been 24 years since we've assessed the accuracy of the Deer Hunter Survey with some sort of a truth layer, some sort of layer of how many moose are there actually there. And these surveys such as this are designed to be checked periodically. So our moose density has changed. That could change your deer hunter sighting rate. Additionally, has deer hunter behavior changed in the 24 years that has elapsed? Could that be influencing the deer hunter sighting rate of moose? And so, moose understanding abundance of moose is particularly important, I'd argue, for this species. It's important for many species, most fish and wildlife species, but for moose at this time in New Hampshire, I'd argue, is particularly important. There's widespread social concern about the decline in abundance of moose across the state. The primary limiting factor for moose in northern New Hampshire right now is winter ticks, and winter ticks vary with moose density. More higher densities of moose is more winter ticks, so it's an important measure for understanding that factor. And then we have a management system that is linked to moose density. For example, in many of the moose management regions, we have permit suspension level cutoff thresholds that are related to moose density. So it is, in my mind, important, and that of the division's mind, important to understand moose abundance well. So this research project is using camera traps and drones with thermal and red, green, blue sensors. And red, green, blue sensors is really just a color camera, or that's how I interpret it, probably much more, but for the purposes of this presentation, think of it as a color camera. The project timeline. So field work for this project began in 2022 and will continue through 2024, and then we expect the project to be wrapped up June to August of 2025. So the field components involved deploying cameras, gaining permissions, and then checking cameras 2 times per year. And that will occur through to fall 2024. And then there were drone surveys during winter 2023, and then they just wrapped up for this winter 2024. Those occurred in January and February. So now it's continuing with camera monitoring and the researchers are gonna be focused on processing and analyzing the data and writing reports. For camera traps, there are 330 camera traps statewide, and this project builds off, or is also synergistic, so it uses the same cameras as the Fur Bear project, Fur Bear Research Project that Fish and Game is also funding. And so the Fur Bear project was designed to have the cameras out in the southern part of the state, the Moose project in the northern part of the state. But I used design a couple seconds ago, but design is the wrong word. It's the same monitoring method with the cameras. It's the same placement and height and whatnot of the cameras. It's just the cameras in the northern WMUs are covered by this grant, and the cameras in the southern WMUs are covered by the Fur Bear grant. But data from both is combined and used. So, for placing the cameras, the specific area, or the specific location of each camera is random, but the general area was, there were multiple factors considered for what area cameras were going to be located in. Essentially, what the researchers did was they looked at the variation in habitat on the landscape, and you want your cameras to be located in areas that capture that range of habitat conditions on the landscape. And so think of this as land cover. So for land cover, it could be conifer forest or deciduous forest, would be major ones, moose related. Distance from roads and trails. And forest age, young forest, mature forest. So they're capturing the variation in these factors and others on the landscape with the placement of these cameras. Per camera data analysis. So taking the pictures, the detections of moose by each camera trap, and then relating that to a moose density for each WMU, they're using two models, two statistical models. The first is the time to event model, and the second is the REST model, the random encounter staying time model. So for the time to event model, you have your camera, and then you have this area of detection in front of the camera. And that area of detection is the area where if a moose walks through that, the camera is going to detect it. And that is one thing that makes moose and cameras, or cameras are an effective method for a species like moose, is because they're large, they're very likely to set off the camera if they go in front of it. So, you have your detection area in front of the camera, and your animal comes through and passes through, is detected, and moves on. The time to event model is operating on the premise that at higher densities of animals, it takes less time from when you deploy that camera to when you capture the first image of that animal. Yeah, and then the random encounter staying time model is a little bit more complicated, but what it is doing is it uses a rapid series of pictures when the animal is in that detection zone, the detection area, and calculates how fast is it moving. And it then uses the number of detections of that animal and its movement rate to model density. Both models will be used and compared to understand which is more accurate and more feasible, really. For camera trap results thus far, like I said, there's 330 cameras. The cameras are clustered, you'll see, in each WMU, and that is to make checking them and maintaining them more efficient. But they are designed to capture that variation in habitat. And the UNH crew does this with 2 checks per year, once in the spring, once in the fall. And the fall check and the spring checks, for the moose cameras, they lower or raise them to adjust for snow. During a camera check, they swap the batteries, swap an SD card. It's pretty efficient, and move on. Now with using cameras to monitor wildlife, a challenge is that they generate large numbers of pictures, and processing those pictures is a pretty heavy burden, workload-wise. In this project, all images from 2002 have been processed thus far, and they're working on 2023. And a strength of doing this through UNH is that they have been using undergraduates, a team of undergraduates and graduate students to process these photos, so they can help train students to do this, as well as leverage some of that relatively available help or work on this project. For the drone surveys. The drone surveys were really, it's a 2-year, so there were 2 seasons of drone surveys. So in year 1, the idea was to develop the technique. What was that grid pattern of the drone survey flight going to be, and also determine siteability. So we'll get into siteability here in just a minute. And then the second year, so UAS is an unmanned aerial system. What the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service wants us to use in grants for drones. Should have switched that out here. Anyhow, year 2 was to vamp up the modeling, or the monitoring, the survey design chosen in northern New Hampshire and across in each of those 12 grids or 12 blocks. And that was to understand, try to estimate moose density. So going into the project, going into year 1, the design of the surveys was something such as this. It's a grid pattern where you're completely covering the area underneath that grid with the thermals and red-green blue sensors. And it was thought to do it along a road or a trail to maintain visual line of sight. You know, the major restrictions on using drones to monitor moose right now is that they have to be within line of sight. The drone has to be within line of sight of an observer, and I should say they have to be below 400 feet above ground level. So this was the survey design incorporating those restrictions, and those are FAA restrictions. After year 1, the crew quickly realized, or they became very quickly skilled at using view sheds. So staff in northern New Hampshire were very helpful and worked with the research crew to identify these kind of viewing points where it's likely you could fly that drone and have the operator in one location and be able to cover a large area. And so Fish and Game staff and the research crew got really good at finding these areas and being pretty creative. And so they really haven't had to use trails or do them from roads. You know, this picture, so the grid that was being flown was actually on that far hillside that you can that seems like the clouds are going towards. So, and the red, green, blue versus thermal sensors. So here's just a comparison. You know, it's not always like this, but so your color image is on the left, and you don't see any moose. But on the right, those 2 bright areas, those are moose that were in the conifer cover. So under certain conditions, that thermal camera can be particularly effective. For siteability, siteability is how many moose are present but not detected, and this is important for these aerial surveys. You need to know what your accuracy is. So here, this photo, I know it's far for the folks in the back, but you know, if you're viewing the photos on the left in the color image, you'd be able to detect the 2 moose that are in that, they're the yellow dots on the right that are detected there in the thermal image. But what happens when one of those moose is underneath one of those orange areas? Those orange areas are conifer trees that are, you know, they have a lot more thermal, they have a lot more heat to them, so they're brighter color and they're blocking thermal signal from what's below them. So to understand that, essentially what the crew did was they flew surveys at a tighter pattern in each cardinal direction from one of those detected moose to capture that moose at a different angle, in which case it would be behind conifer cover. And they did that when those moose were present, and they did it when those moose were not present, and they randomized those photos and then gave them to a trained observer. And so that observer didn't know when there were moose present or not present, they just had to be able to detect them. From that, they're understanding how many moose are present and not detected, because they're included by conifer cover, versus how many are we clearly seen. That work is ongoing. Initial results, so this is a graph on the bottom there, going from left to right is increasing conifer cover in the canopy, and on the left is your frequency of moose detections. So what you're seeing there is most moose are detected when there are low amounts of conifer cover in the canopy, and on the right, as it gets lower, you have fewer moose detected as conifer canopy cover increases. Essentially, when there's 80% canopy cover of moose, you're going to detect, or 80% conifer canopy cover, you're going to detect 20% or fewer of the moose there. Drone surveys, winter 2024, those just wrapped up. And so they did surveys in all of those 12 grids that you can see in that small map down on the right there. And those grids are overlaid over cameras as well, so that the density estimates from the two can be directly compared, and also to capture variation in habitat. So they just wrapped up those surveys, and they had 2 different crews operating 2 different drones. They surveyed 50 to 200 acres in each one of those grids. So, and that was 6 hours, at least 6 hours of flight time per grid. So they were really focused on this and had to pick their weather days appropriately. And that's why they are not here giving you this presentation. They've been focused on that work. So that is one reason. So, yep. And now they will be modeling that to move forward with a density estimate. Expected outcomes and products. The final report from this project is expected in June to August 2025. The idea is to generate WMU level moose density estimates or indices. And it will provide a comparison track between camera traps, UAS surveys, and the deer hunter survey. So a comparison of the moose densities generated by all 3 of those. Additionally, it's an opportunity to train future natural resource professionals at the University of New Hampshire. And so here's an example. This is not generated from this project, but this is an example of a heat map of estimated moose abundance in New Hampshire. And this is what we expect to be able to generate with the data from this work is you have estimates of moose in specific areas that are based on not only these surveys, but they incorporate the habitat at that site. And then you can expand out from there throughout the whole state based on those same habitat variables that are available statewide. So does anyone have questions about this research project?
Anybody got any questions after that display there?
I've got one, Chair. The timeline on making our next season settings, are we going to be doing that before June, August 2025 or after? What's the timeline?
Maybe I'll let Andy speak. Andy's pretty familiar with that timeline, so yeah.
So as far as, if you're referring to the next biennial season setting process, that will be next spring.
Yeah.
Next late winter, spring.
Yeah.
So that will actually be before this final report's produced. If you're talking in terms of the next long-term management plan, the tight timeline, these results should be in just prior to that.
Okay.
But as far as the 2-year season setting process, that will occur before this report's finalized.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
No.
Whoop, whoop. Oh, Chris.
So you said that one of the anticipated outcomes is the ability to compare the Hunter survey, camera trap data, these data sets. So how will that comparison ultimately be reflected in the estimates that we use when we're setting seasons and take? Is it going to be, we continue to rely primarily on one or the other, or will it be a blend of the three? How is that going to?
It will depend on the accuracy of camera traps and of the drones, and also the cost, the feasibility of how that looks long-term, and then also the accuracy of the deer hunter survey. And also, moving forward, that's going to depend on what are our objectives for moose management in the next game plan. Essentially, this isn't going to influence our current approach through 2025 because the project's going to be ongoing. But after that, how is it going to be used? We should, there's a lot to be learned. They offer not only moose density benefits, but also an important piece of data that's being collected is your proportion of calves per cow, and that's an important measure of population health. So it's, yeah, I guess that's the best I can do to speak to that without giving you some hard answer, because a lot of it is going to depend on what happens with not only the accuracy, but also our management objectives.
I have another question.
John.
I'm just curious, with this technology that everybody is aware of it being out there, but it's new to a lot of people, in terms of the sensitivity of the drone surveillance, do you make note, if you can even observe, as side notes, if you will, of any predator presence? I mean, or is that just not picked up on and is it ignored?
Well, all of the data is being stored and will be passed over to Fish and Game. So and with the drone surveys, so yeah, I can say that they have all that, and I think they note, when the survey is going on, there's a lot of little things that you'll see that you're like, maybe a moose, and they go back and review that. And so, it could end up being a deer or something. So it's noted, and the data will remain. And the data is not, it's not like you look at a screen and it's there and gone. It is stored, and Fish and Game will have that. So as far as using this method for smaller species, though, I think it's a little less certain, because it's really, they're flying as high as they possibly can to cover as much area. So I'm not sure what size animal it will accurately detect down to. Yeah.
I got a question. On the camera traps, how do you account for, say, an individual animal being caught on camera repetitive times?
Yep. So I guess that would depend a little bit on the model. If it's that time to event model, you're only going to your first detection for calculating density. I think in other cases, I would have to talk with the researchers about that question specifically. My training as a wildlife biologist would say If your sample sizes are large enough statistically, that comes out in the wash. If you have a large number of cameras out, so just by chance, that camera ends up where this moose tends to maybe go bed somewhere and then get up each morning and walk, right? But there's another chance that the other cameras were not in such a place, so they are not going to have that bias. And by combining those two together, they roughly equal out. So, it's a good question though, and something that I have to learn about myself as well.
Any further questions of Henry? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Update on developing a new 10-year game management plan.
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to come. I'm really providing an information item. As you may know, and as the title kind of gives away, our current 10-year management plan for our game species is near the end of its life. It expires at the end of 2025. So we need to have the next plan in place for January of 2026. So this is actually fourth long-term management plan that we've had for game species, with the first one that was put in place in 1997. So it's kind of hard to believe we're already working on the fourth plan. And again, it's slated to be a 10-year management plan. 10 years seems to be about the norm. Many states use this longer-term approach to game population management, and some more locals examples would include both Maine and Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, Quebec, and Ontario. So it's a fairly common practice in the management of game species. So some of the advantages to kind of a longer term approach is it leads to consistency in your mission and your management. You know, if you have a 10-year plan where you're working towards agreed upon goals and objectives that were set based on public input, it takes some time to reach those objectives. So having kind of a longer term approach allows you to make slow and steady progress, hopefully, towards those goals. It prevents you from kind of switching gears partway through, and it just leads to more consistency of both the data you're collecting as well as the management decisions you're making. So these goals and objectives for these different species will be based on biological data, but they will also incorporate public input. And the way that we will solicit public input is in a variety of ways. One, you may remember from the last time, a company called Responsive Management did surveys. They're a national company that does a lot of these surveys. We will work with Responsive Management to do another public opinion survey. And that survey will focus on two user groups. It'll focus on the general New Hampshire population, because we're managing wildlife for all New Hampshire, all the residents in New Hampshire, but it'll also be a separate survey, a similar survey, but geared towards measuring the input from license holders. So it'll be two pools of the population. This is very much similar to what we did the last go-around. In the past, these surveys have been largely phone surveys, but as technology has advanced, obviously online surveys have become a useful tool. So this approach will use both the phone survey, because not everybody has internet access, but also will utilize an online option. So it'll use both venues to solicit public input. One thing I did want to mention is the last go-around, so when we established the plan for this past 10-year period, we're focused on our big game species, deer, bear, moose, and turkey, but it also included a couple small game species, over snowshoe hare and rough grouse. We believe that long-term management plans for both small game as well as fur bearers is equally as important as plans for these larger big game species, but we don't believe inserting small game and fur into what we kind of call the big game plan is the best move. So our plan is, for this next plan, to focus on the 4 big game species and then hold a separate process, develop a management plan for small game and fur bears. So there's a lot of reasons for that. So to kind of give you an update where we are, project leaders have been updating the species assessment. Those species assessments were initially written 2 plans ago and then get periodically updated based on the past 10 years worth of data. So project leaders are updating those. I've been in contact with responsive management and I'm waiting for a quote from that company to perform the survey, and then at that point I'll start working on a contract which will need to go through Governor Council. This process has been budgeted for, so the money is in our wildlife budget for this process, knowing it was coming up. And the other thing that's happening is project leaders are reviewing the survey questions from previous surveys and kind of modifying, adding, deleting questions based on kind of new management needs. You know, you want a certain amount of the same questions asked because that allows you to compare changes in attitudes over time, but there's also some opportunity to modify questions to reflect, you know, what's a priority now compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So we're very early in the process, but I just wanted to make you aware that the process is starting, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to attempt to answer.
Any questions of Andy? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Overview of future action item to expend up to $30,000 from the Fisheries Habitat account to conserve 140.3 acres in Hanover. John McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I do have a presentation behind you if you want to take a look at that. So before I even start on this one, something that is relevant and important to know is that, in fact, even for the next presentation, the next request after that, is this is very typical of a lot of the land conservation that we've participated in financially when we've requested of you to use Fisheries Habitat account funds to help conserve the property. It's a pretty similar amount of money. There's been ones where we put in significantly more, but this is sort of a typical amount request. So I'll just start off from there. And before I forget, I do want to introduce 2 people, one of them real quickly. For a long time I was the fisheries habitat biologist, and now I'm the program supervisor, so I supervise that person and 4 other of our staff. And Jared Lamy, who's right there, going to raise his hand, he's our new fisheries habitat biologist, and we're really excited to have him. So I just want to do that. And the other person is Adair Mulligan, who's standing up, who's the executive director of the Hanover Conservancy. And she's here today because the Hanover Conservancy owns this property now, has been working very hard to conserve it. And she first contacted me probably sometime last winter or last spring maybe to talk about this. So she's available for questions today too. The first 2 maps are the same maps that were provided in your packet, and just realized I wish I had blown or made the little electrofishing, the fish survey sites a little bigger, but they're the tiny purple and black dots that are on there. The long story short is that about 10, 12 years ago, Ben Nugent and seasonal staff went out and did a lot of fish surveys in this area in the Mink Brook watershed, which basically flows from the north and west side, roughly, of what you see there, downstream towards the Connecticut River, towards the west. So a big thing that I wanted to show you from the zoomed out image is there's a lot of conserved land in the area. And that yellow one that's in the center there is the 140-acre property in question. So it would be adding on to that larger conserved block of land. So I'm going to zoom in on that, and maybe it's a little easier. I still made them too small. One of the electrofishing sites that we did, and I think it was 2011 or 12, just so happens was right at this property, right on the downstream side. It's basically about the center there on the south side of the yellow line. And it turns out Like a lot of Mink Brooks headwater streams, there's a lot of wild brook. It's a pretty productive watershed. At least the headwaters are. The main stem has wild brook trout too, and I'm sure they use that as a conduit to spawn with other populations throughout the watershed. So that's really important. And again, the greenish sort of shaded area to the east there, north and east, are conserved properties that are right next to this one. So this is going to abut right up next to those others. I just put these photos in here. Oh yeah, so these first two photos on the left is not a very good photo of mine from this May, I think it was, of the stream in question. It's small. It's about 3 to 4 feet wide, kind of typical, and maybe in the summer even a little smaller than that. But it doesn't mean it's not important just because it's a small stream. In fact, all the surveys we do, we continuously find that these smaller headwater streams are absolutely vital to wild brook trout conservation and angling in New Hampshire and elsewhere. So on the left is a photo of the stream, and on the right is a photo of excuse me, of a hiking trail that's on the western or eastern side of the property. And I only put it in here because one of the really great things that the Hanover Conservancy and Adair has been working so hard on is making sure that there's some seeps, some groundwater seeps that form that headwater stream in question here, that cross the trail. And so she's doing all her due diligence to make sure that the trail area is not impacting that water resource. There's no fish in that area because these are little tiny streams and little tiny seeps, but of course they flow downhill. And so you don't want lots of sediment going in there and all kinds of that stuff. So they've been working really hard on making sure that in the very near future they're going to make sure that there's no impacts to those seeps. This was actually one of the things when we went out there last May. As soon as I saw it, and Adair already knew this, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, let's just make sure that this is protected as part of this long-term conservation here. Of course, they're very much into making sure that's the case. I just throw these two photos in just to kind of give you an idea. They're sort of random photos that I took out there. I'm not a wildlife biologist, I'm not a terrestrial ecologist, but it struck me, this is what a lot of the forest on the property looks like. Relatively young. There's a big red oak on the right there, and there's some other species there too, but don't think too much about these two photos. Just want to give you an idea. You know, it's mostly forested. But there's also a very significant hayfield there as well. This is looking from the east, facing west. And the next photo is going to be from looking the same direction, but from a couple hundred feet to the left there. So looking west, and so one of the things I might ask Adair to mention, say some things about this. There's on the property, there's this house, which the Hanover Conservancy is going to sell. That's part of the whole project to make sure that, because obviously they don't want the house. And we don't want that house and part of it, you know, somehow impacting the conservation of the property or of the wildlife and fish habitat there. But that's it. You can see it's like a quarter of a mile away across the field. So project budget. Mostly I put this up here because I don't know if there's a way for me to use the mouse on this. Oh, there is. So the project budget's about $1.3 million. Land isn't cheap, obviously, but a big significant, gosh, the mouse went away. There it is. A big part of that is, of course, that they want to sell that house and recoup a lot of that, so the overall project budget would be a lot less once that's gone. But a big thing I want you to see is this number 30,000, relatively small compared to the entire project cost. Again, very typical for a lot of the land conservation that we do for fisheries habitat. Account, you can see there's some committed funds here. My guess is this one will get committed to it too. And then the second to last slide is, Diane and I thought it would be important to show you our current balance in the fisheries habitat account. It's just a little under $1 million. So this request is about 3% of that, about 30,000. And as a reminder, we get about 150,000 more that goes into that every year. $1 on each fishing license, 150,000 anglers, so about $150,000. And I was just going to leave this. I can, of course, go back to other photos or other maps if you want, but I thought I'd leave that as the last slide for you. And happy to do my best to answer any of your questions.
Anybody have any questions of John? This is an informational item only. There's no request being made today for this money.
I'm just curious, and full and complete disclosure, done a little homework on the Hanover Conservancy. Quite frankly, I think they're pretty well heeled. There's a lot of money, $3.2 or $3 million in assets, a pretty large sum of cash. I'm not sure I understand why the Hanover Conservancy needs any money on a $1.28 million project from New Hampshire Fish and Game. So what's the background to the need for us to participate?
So I'll turn it over to Adair. She has her hand up.
I am so glad you asked that question. Thank you so much.
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
Oh, I sure can.
Mainly for me, maybe nobody else, but mainly for me.
My children say I speak too loudly, so you flattered me, sir. Thank you. Thanks, John. The Hanover Conservancy is the oldest local land trust in the state of New Hampshire. We serve only one town, the town of Hanover, which is, a very well-heeled community. I do, believe it or not, have trouble raising funds there sometimes, especially for projects like this. We were fortunate to get the LCHIP grant. Fortunately, the Moose Plate grant has not yet been announced. We are struggling with this project. It is the biggest one we have ever done in our 63 years. It represents, we had to take out $1 million loan from the Conservation Fund, which is due in about 7 months and counting. We have been unable to sell the house. I'd buy it in a heartbeat myself if I could afford it. But it is on an additional 10 acres of land that is adjacent to the 140 that we've been talking about. Survey just came through Friday. So we have an event scheduled in this weekend with neighbors. A local foundation has given us $20,000 to help, but we are paying $1,100 a week in debt service. We are a very small organization. We have only 2 staff, 2 full-time professional staff. I'm a biologist, I have an assistant. But we do not have the endowment that other organizations have. Our last check of our investments was that we had about $2 million in investments to keep us going. We've been trying to build an endowment since I came on staff in 2010, which there was $400,000 tucked under the mattress in the savings account, and that's all there was. So we've been trying to build it up. The other assets that you may be citing are the lands that we own and have protected for the public. All of it is open to the public, and definitely open for deer hunting, let me tell you. We need help with our deer. Please come take them away fast. So I guess this budget that you see here is a previous one that I gave John. Our debt service has been racking up. We're going to have to, we've already dropped the price of the house by $100,000, but this is really putting a big dent in our ability to do anything else in town. But I'm happy to answer any other questions too. Yes?
Go ahead, John.
Follow up, please. May I? Yes. It'll be a couple of questions.
Okay.
In trying to get the view from 30,000 feet and learning about the Hanover Conservancy and properties that you own in fee and you have easements as well, looking at the detail of some of the listed properties that you basically own, and and you mentioned the hunting. I know that some of them are hunting by permit only, okay? Some are bow hunting only. Some, one property in particular, and I might be mistaken if it's, I don't even remember, it's the Balch property or the Britton property, does allow hunting, okay? It's about a 122 acre property.
That one is 79.
I'm sorry?
That one is 79 acres.
79. So, I mean, I'm taking this seriously, but trying to look at all aspects of it. And with respect to monies, okay, and it's a fisheries discussion, it's a brook trout discussion, and you know, wanting to protect that habitat, if you will. But there are other users also, and they're not just fishermen. So that's of concern to me. I want to just be sure that, you know, that nobody gets kind of kept away from this large property.
That is exactly why we want to protect it. It was previously privately owned, and hunting was by permission only from the owner, who has since passed away. As far as our other properties go, the Britton Forest is open for hunting. The Mare Niles Forest, which is right between the Britton property and this one that we're talking about, is completely open for all of that for hunting. Especially, we are encouraging people to go out there for hunting. The others that we own are smaller properties that we own in fee. Are smaller properties that are completely surrounded by residential neighborhoods. The Balch Hill natural area that you mentioned is one where we finally, after years of, I'm not going to use the word brainwash, but trying to convince the public and our neighbors that indeed we needed hunting. We were able to get away with a bow hunting by permit only because it was only a small piece of like 10 acres surrounded by homes. People were freaked out about their dogs and kids. So we do manage that. We took one of them off this year just because I lost my staff person who was managing our hunting program. But we are on the town's deer hunting advisory committee, and we are promoting hunting in all of our communications and all of our outreach.
Okay, one more follow-up there, if I may. Looking at where the property is, you are within a stone's throw of the Silvio Conti National Wildlife Refuge. Why not appeal to the feds? They seem to have endless amounts of money.
Yeah, the Silvio Conti National Wildlife Refuge is 11,685 acres, is it? Includes the entire watershed of the Connecticut River. And for 20 years, I worked for the Connecticut River Joint Commissions. That's how I ran into Eric. That's how I ran into Scott. It's good to see you again. It's how I met Diane Emerson, who is now Timmons. She taught me everything I know about riparian buffers. I'm working with the feds right now on another agricultural land easement, and they've been really helpful, really great. I also know that there's a lot of competition for those funds in our area, specifically from somebody who owns neighboring land and is a very persuasive gentleman. So I think we got to unload our debt on this property fast. And working with the feds is not a fast thing.
Let me just leave you with this. I have a sense I know who that gentleman is, and he is very well heeled.
I know. I've
Okay.
been talking to him so much about this project. I haven't yet had the offer of a gift. I've been trying. I've known him for 30 years.
Thank you.
What's that?
When he's done.
I'll be done. I'm done.
You have 2 questions? Well, if Fish and Game were to give $30,000 onto this project, who has control of the land and what goes on it?
The Hanover Conservancy will hold fee title. I'm in the middle of writing the stewardship management plan for it, which will be very clear about public access, be very clear about public access specifically for hunting and fishing and trapping, also for snowshoeing, hiking, cross-country skiing, that kind of thing. It'll be open 24/7 to the public. We will be working with John on an agreement to be a little specific about riparian buffers, and I wrote this series
I mean,
on
what buffers?
riparian buffers. I'm sorry?
And what do you mean by the buffers?
Oh, by protective vegetation within 50 to 100 feet of all of the surface waters and the wetlands on this property to make sure
So
that...
for an example, 50 to 100 feet from that stream,
Oh, you bet.
Yeah,
so you wouldn't allow anybody to walk up to the stream?
Oh, no, I'm glad you asked that too. Because we've applied to the local chapter of Trout Unlimited for a grant to build a proper foot crossing across it. Right now, people are just tromping through the stream. But we would have a trail, a skinny forested trail that would go just
A trail along the stream for them to walk on?
No, just across it, not along it. Because that would create too much foot traffic and sedimentation along the stream.
So like a 6-foot bridge, little footbridge.
Like a 4 by 16 foot hemlock bridge.
So you'd have 4 feet of access to go fishing, correct?
Well, as John pointed out, this is the nursery headwaters for the largest stream in Hanover, Mink Brook. So we're not talking about people standing on this little bridge and being able to catch one of these little guys. That might be an hors d'oeuvre. It is feeding the quality of the stream so that when the stream grows, it has the high quality that you're looking for.
But how much insight is Fishing Game going to have for their money in order to say, here's what goes on the property?
I listened to John, I listened to Diane.
Yeah, so one of the things I forgot to do in my presentation was specifically talk about the riparian buffers. And so every land conservation project that the Fisheries Habitat account has provided funding through, with approval from the commission, every one of those has somewhere in some legal agreement, and there's a whole bunch of different mechanisms for that. There's language in there that says you can't do certain things in those riparian, those stream-side areas. So, for example, we put a similar, actually it was less money into a Forest Society project. Well, we've done a couple of projects with them. And those, I think, there was, I think of one in Sutton right now where we said, hey, no cutting within 100 feet of the stream. So the Forest Society is a So that one happened to go into conservation easement. They're not allowed to cut any trees except for invasive plant removal stuff within 100 feet of that brook trout stream in that case. And so we're working on finalizing those kinds of things on this property. When we walked out there last May, one of the first things I said was, other than misidentifying a bird call, and then I'm completely embarrassed by that, but I'm a fishing guy, was that, we don't want trees being cut and mowed down or anything right next to the stream. And of course they agreed right away, like, yeah, I mean, how many feet do you want? And I can't remember if we settled on 50 or 100, both are great. I think we said 100, but that's the idea, is to make sure that that habitat, that cold water, the wetlands next to them are all protected. And for sure, if you go out there, let's say today, you can walk over to the stream, and if you want to walk along it and fish it, you can do that. I think what you were talking about was a small pedestrian crossing bridge that's narrow, but also very long compared to the width of the stream, so that that bridge is not impacting the habitat of the stream or anything like that.
And I know this
did I
may
answer-
be a long shot, but can we have, next month when you come before us for approval, is it possible you could have that agreement for us to see exactly what's in it?
Think you could do that?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. We're doing something very similar with the LCHIP staff right now. And so that's gonna be easy to fold into it, and this is the work I've been doing for 20 years anyway, and it's all about water, and it's all about water quality. So it won't be a stretch.
And if I may add, just because you said L-chip, we actually, with your approval 2 years ago, we had a similar project, although a smaller property, same amount of money, with the Francistown Land Trust. And I think, and the language we used in whatever deed or whatever it was at that time, I think was the same as the L-chip, and I worked a little bit with Paula Martin's with L-chip. So I think we're talking about using the exact same framework, the exact same approach with this one.
Commissioner Hodgson over here, and then Commissioner Hodgson.
Thank you. So, question for John. So, thinking about this in the context of these funds coming from anglers, and what I sense is the reality that this particular property doesn't offer a lot of angling opportunities. How interconnected is the rest of the Mink Brook watershed? Have we identified any fish passage barriers? Those are the questions I have, trying to understand how important this discrete property is to the angling opportunities in the rest of the watershed.
That's a great question, and I just messed up my presentation. But the short answer is I don't remember right this moment how many barriers there might be, such as a culvert that goes under the road. That information is available, and I'm happy to look for that and be able to bring that to the March meeting. Some more details about that. But I mean, overall, and I wish the map behind you doesn't show every bit of the Mink Brook watershed, because the downstream western and southwestern portions of it aren't shown there. But there's the headwaters are just, there's a lot of trout. It's neat, it's pretty impressive. There's a lot of wild brook trout in them. And so the way I view this is one piece of a lot of good work that takes decades to do. So that's the one, in fact, it kind of looks like a puzzle piece. That's the one puzzle piece for this specific one here.
Just two things. The first is that when we went out and helped Fish and Game and TU people with the volunteer effort, Diane was there as well. And this was one of the 5 top producing Eastern Brook trout sites, was the stream coming. The sampling station was literally 10 feet from the boundary of this property. And the other point is that many of the things that you see on that map outlined in green are not permanently protected at all. This also includes the publicly owned layer, so that huge chunk on the western side there, that's the public water supply lands, they're not protected at all. But we have worked on the protection of especially the Mink Brook corridor and Headwaters watershed for the last, I guess since I came on about 15 years ago.
Commissioner Hodgson.
Yep, thank you. Can you go back to the money slide, please?
The money slide.
The money slide.
That one?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I follow. This property is owned today by Hanover Conservancy.
We had to buy it in October. The estate was going to put it up on the open market. There was a phone call that came in to our real estate agent who was working for us for free. The week before we were able to close, the family agreed to hold it off the market for 8 weeks to allow us to do our due diligence. The phone call came into the real estate agents from somebody from California saying, you know, I got $1 million and I'd really like to buy 100 acres of mountainside land to build my dream home. Yeah. And so that's why we pulled the trigger on the biggest loan we have ever taken in our organization's history to take it off the market. We are in the subdivision process right now with the town to try and separate off the 10 acres with the house, leaving the 140.3. And we're currently paying Hanover property taxes as well. The Trout Unlimited amount of $5,000 that John has is, that's an old figure. We've now applied for the chapter's $2,500 grant to do the trail improvements for water quality protection that we just talked about. The house is not gonna go for 800. We're gonna get maybe 500 for the house, and I'm gonna try to offer the neighbors the opportunity to help us protect the rest of the land along the road. If I can put that politely.
So I think that's ultimately my question, right? It's already owned. What happens if you do not get what you want for the house? And our money is to reduce the burden for Hanover Conservancy, because you do already own it. So is there a risk that 10 acres turns into 20, turns into 30, or hey, we weren't able to recover what we needed to get down the road, now we have to consider selling the property?
Our board is really committed to this. First of all, because it's the ultimate source of the main brook in our town that actually goes right through one of the villages and floods. And so I don't foresee a time when the board would say, okay, time to sell it. Honestly, I can't answer that right now because we didn't expect to be having such a hard time selling the house. We will be very much stymied in our ability to do future conservation work until we can backfill the amount that we have devoted to this. But this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There are not many pieces of land. There's only one other piece of land on that whole ridge that could be protected. The rest have been either protected by us or ruined. So that's my non-answer to your question.
You good?
Yep, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is an informational issue only, so there won't be a vote today. Okay, moving on to number 5, overview of future action items to expend up to $38,000 from the fisheries habitat account to hire seasonal employees for 2024 and fiscal year 25 to conduct Eastern Brook Trout joint venture fish surveys and New Hampshire stream crossing, culvert and bridge surveys in multiple watersheds within Grafton County.
It's a mouthful.
Wow, yeah.
Fish and stream crossing surveys. So like I said for the last one, this one actually is very typical for requests that we bring to the commission to all of you every year. And you might remember Diane had almost the same presentation. I just changed 2023 to 2024 and things like that, and some numbers, but it's very similar requests that we've made in the past. And you know, I've been here 19 years, and the first ones we did like this were starting in 05. And we've done them, not every year, but almost every year since then, I think. Some of this is going to be a little bit of repeat for most of you from last year, and I have a presentation behind you. I put up the Saco River watershed one as complete. Diane actually had this exact same slide in this time last year. Just kind of show you, we've done all of the stream crossings and all of the fish surveys in the very big Saco watershed. So, let me go too forward. Moving forward, we still have data gaps, and I would say don't focus too much on how many dots there are in places, but in northern Grafton County, you should probably expand that circle or that oval a little bit bigger. And also in the western part of Coos County, there's just a big area where you don't have a lot of fish surveys done. So a really important part about doing these fish and also stream crossings, as Commissioner Hodgson's asked earlier about stream crossings, connectivity within watersheds. A really important part here is if we don't have the data, we don't know what to do where, right? And what to do could be our typical fishing regulations. It could be stocking, so those are all kind of trout management plan type stuff, how we manage perch trout and other trout species in the state. It can also be for habitat, which is, you know, I always have my habitat hat on. In terms of land conservation, like the last thing we just talked about, or in terms of stream restoration projects that we work on with our partners. So those are some of the data gaps. Let's see if I can go backwards. We finished the Saco. So what the request is today is about some of those remaining, what we call it watershed data, fish surveys and stream crossing data collection. And before I forget too, let me go to that map. Some of the dots on the map, a significant proportion of them, are not surveys that we did, but they're surveys that one of our two biggest partners, the Forest Service, so the White Mountain National Forest, and also New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, because they actually do electrofishing as well. They do it more from a water quality data perspective than they do a fisheries or habitat management perspective, but we work really, really well with them. We go out and do some of the surveys with them. They come out with some of our surveys. Sometimes we say, you guys are going to be in an area, can you do our 5 over there? Because you're going to be there tomorrow anyway, and they do it. So it's a really good partnership. You can think of it a little bit as we get some free stuff done because of those partnerships. So I only have, I think, 2 or 3 more slides, but in Grafton County in particular, last year we did about 125 or so, 130 sites. Now we still have about 380 remaining. Now that I'm saying that, I'm not sure if I think it's the light blue, not the greenish. The light blue tiny watersheds are the ones where we want to get 1 electrofishing site at least in each one of those. And the green ones, hopefully I'm saying that right, the green ones we've already done. Yeah, the greenish ones we've already done. In that same area, Grafton County, we still have about 1,500 stream crossings we want to assess. So I mentioned partners earlier. We have a whole lot of partners. Sometimes they're municipalities, sometimes they're the conservation districts. Sometimes there are other non-governmental organizations that do, sometimes it's Department of Environmental Services that go out and do a lot of those stream crossings. So my guess is actually we do fewer than all these other partners do. But this request is to actually have some of these seasonal employees who are not, let's be frank about it, are not the most highly paid, seasonal employees in the world, who work very hard, and we get, and the only reason I mentioned the pay part is we get a lot of bang for the buck with these hard-working folks. Is that the last slide? That might be the last one. So again, our current balance is about 967. That's the same number that I used in the last presentation, okay? So the request here is 38, which would leave about 930. If next month you were to approve both of these, that would bring it down a total of 68,000. So just to be clear, instead of being 929, it'd basically be 900,000 would still be in the account. The other thing, I'm just going to put this on here, that before I forget to mention, and before Diane, she's smiling right now, interjects some things that I forgot to say, is that this year we would like to hire 6 seasonal employees, 3 out of our Lancaster office, Region 1 Lancaster office, and 3 out of our New Hampton office. And that is because what we found over the years is if you hire 2 people for each office, that means you have 1 crew anytime you go out to do an electrofishing survey. If we hire 3, we actually have, in New Hampton, Ben Nugent, and then 2 and 2, we can basically, at least on smaller streams, we can do a lot more. And so we don't want, our preference is not to drag out this process for many years. If we have 6 total this year as opposed to 4, the efficiency goes up, we get these things done a lot faster than if they're less money total than hired fewer people. And Diane is just waiting to say something. No? All right. Maybe I covered everything. Happy to answer any and all questions.
Anybody got any questions of John? Or Todd?
You said last year the crew did about 179 sites or so?
Oh, gosh. I think it's around
Plus or
130
minus,
to 150. I think that was more the number.
And I'm asking because you said there's 1,500 plus 379, so there's 1,879 sites left. So we should expect this request for the next 1,879 divided by 150 for the next 10 years.
No, we definitely want this done way before 10 years. Okay. So I'm glad you asked about that, because when you put those numbers together, that's what it sounds like. But in terms of the electrofishing, and I'm going to go out a little bit on a limb here, and 379 sites with this many, you might be able to do it this year. That would be wonderful. But again, we'd have 6 seasonals. We have Bend Nugent, New Hampton, we have Dalton, Court March in Lancaster. We're in the process right now of hiring for our cold water program leader, a biologist in our Lancaster office. The idea here is not to come to you to just do 10 years to do Grafton County. That, in my mind, would be a failure on our part if it takes that long. And 10 years from now, if I come here again and ask, someone can quote me from 2024, but I think that's not going to happen. The other, so I have it up there now, that's about 380, that's electrofishing sites. The other thing we're doing is the stream crossing surveys. Our crews do focus most of their time and energy on the electrofishing because that's what we do at Fish and Game. We have that expertise, we have that experience, we have that efficiency, so we do that. A lot of our other partners, state or other organizations, are doing the stream crossing surveys. But we are requesting that some of our time or our seasonal's time be used towards that effort as well.
Diane?
Can I add? So 2 things. The first thing is electrofishing is obviously a legal method. So obviously some of our partners can't just go out and do that. They have to get the scientific permit, which is part of the reason why we focus on the electrofishing first. And secondly, to add, so 6 people seems like, okay, 6 people, that's great. That's 3 people, independent crews, they can do that. As John was mentioning, we have other permanent staff that have other responsibilities, but when they are free, you really can do this work with 2 seasonals. So 2 groups becomes, 3 seasonals becomes 4, 2 groups, and then we also utilize a bunch of partners, as John mentioned. So potentially this can lead into a ton of groups that are fully aware, fully trained on what they need to do. There's been times when we've used seasonals to be 1 seasonal leading with 2 other volunteers and done the work. So it can just lead into a much better opportunity, and that's how we can get to the 379 sites. The other thing to add, as all have seen, and by our weather patterns, that things are pretty crazy, and so it behooves us to try to get this data collected for comparability in as close a timeline as we possibly can. So it's better for us to be able to have a bunch of crews out on the landscape collecting this data in the same time period so that we can do that management and come up with that analysis and have the same scenarios and same variables that are impacting our data.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple questions here. Have you done Sullivan County?
We have, let me go back to show you.
The water's more polluted down there, isn't it, than it is in Colorado?
I noticed you highlighted Grafton County, and just below it Sullivan County. And my eyes aren't that great, but it looks like there's a wall of white there.
Yeah, there's sort of like 2 town columns wide kind of thing right along the Connecticut River. So you are correct. We have not filled all those gaps yet.
Okay, so what I was going to offer, but
10 years.
no, what I was going to offer, but I won't, was to amend that from 38,000 to another 20,000 to see if we can't get Sullivan County done. It's been 10. Huh?
Look at Ellsworth County.
It looks pretty dense over on that side of the state to me, but, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck about it. There is a lot of fishing there. Economic development's important to us over there. Fishing happens to be a good economic generator. And I see Coos County, you depend on fishing up there.
Yes, I do.
Certain parts of Grafton County, certainly. And for some reason, we can't seem to get a little further down the state. And is that for next year?
I don't know if it's for next year, but we've been talking about this quite a lot, this exact thing that you're bringing up. Where are those gaps? That's where, one of the gaps, you can see it in the map right there. The short version is we don't have enough permanent staff to make sure that we can lead field crews and also train field crews to do it with our other commitments.
So I was really hoping that this year, if we take care of Grafton and Coos County with additional staff, that maybe next year, somebody will give some consideration to come a little further down the Connecticut River with additional staff out of the same district office, I believe. Maybe we can get some of those communities and streams analyzed. If you will.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in particular, I've done some work in the Ashwellet River watershed, and that's, like, you know, you see on the map, sort of that northwestern part of the Ashwellet, we don't have a lot of fish data for. And
Well,
so
that
we-
starts to get down into Cheshire County, John.
I know.
River.
I was waiting for my turn, you know, we exist.
If I would add, if you want to make that pitch, I will figure out a way to make it work. Part of the reason that these locations were chosen is, I can tell you, Grafton County, we actually bumped COAS to go to Grafton because we had multiple projects with Plymouth State University as well as the Forest Service. And so we discussed, like, okay, you guys can do some, we can do some, and we can, you know, part of our approach is now looking at the watershed. And so that basically led us to stop in COAS, move down to Grafton, and work with our partners to be able to get that done, being a huge data gap. So the direction of where we go next.
This needs a lot more study, John. Bruce, I don't mean to throw a damp towel on it, but we do have a lot of stuff going on in fisheries over the next couple of years. And I would hate to drop the ball on like the hatchery project and, you know, run out of staff and whatnot, in order to move this project quicker.
I understand that. You appreciate my concern.
Absolutely.
Okay?
But it is.
And I don't want to wait another 10 years for somebody to come back here 3 years, 5 years from now and say, geez, you know, now we're going to finally get into Sullivan County. We've done everything else in the state 5, 6 years ago, but we never did Sullivan County. And I don't think that's fair to the sportsmen over there who depend upon and you folks to do this kind of work. I know you got a lot going. I made my point. I hope Sullivan County, parts of Cheshire County that are light can begin to have some attention given to it. Thank you.
We got a new vote, so we'll come quicker.
Yeah. I voted in favor of that, and I'll vote in favor of this.
Commissioner Hodgson.
In past years, we've made a motion to approve that today, even though it's informational, to support the hiring sooner,
I
so
was gonna suggest that.
I would make the motion to.
It is 2/3 of the way through February, and
Yeah.
March is right around the corner, and I don't know when you start putting out feelers to hire these people, but if you know sooner than later that you got the money, it might be quicker. So is that a motion?
That's a motion to approve today.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve $38,000 to come out of the fisheries habitat account to hire seasonal employees for fiscal year 24 and 25 to conduct Eastern Brook Trout joint venture fish survey. Not going to finish the rest of it either. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes,
So
sir.
we're voting to waive the 30 days and we'll have another vote to approve it?
No.
Or we do it all in one motion?
We're changing it to an action item instead of information. Yeah. Yeah, this is an action item now, through the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Okay, legislative committee structure. Legislative committee, Commissioner Price. Right.
Wow.
That's yesteryear.
Wait a minute, I dress much better than
I apologize. There was a Commissioner Patch, so.
We met this morning and reviewed bills as well as rules. We have one change under House Bill 1069 in its original form. We have voted as a full commission to oppose it. It has since been completely rewritten, and it will not affect how the Fish and Game currently responds to right-to-know requests. Therefore, I make a motion to support House Bill 1069. And I'd like a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
You You heard the motion, you heard the second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
Thank you. We had a last minute, yesterday, four bills that came in. They concerned a dam program managed by the DES. Two of the bills, House Bill 1429 and SB 539, the executive director and staff did not recommend we support. Therefore, I make a motion to oppose House Bill 1429 and Senate Bill 359.
539.
539, I'm sorry.
And I'll second that.
I apologize, I was doing homework here. What was the
Just call
bill
the
number?
vote.
Oppose House Bill
1429 and Senate Bill 539.
Okay. Yes, that's right. You heard the motion, you heard the second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
Thank you. The second two bills regarding the dams were turned into study bills to look at funding solutions for dam maintenance, which we're all aware is a very major problem. Those were House Bill 1277 and Senate Bill 549. I make a motion that we support HB 1277 and Senate Bill 549 as they regard study bills looking into dam funding.
I'll second that.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
Thank you. Moving on to rules. Does everybody have the rules package? Oh. Okay. I make a motion to support proposed changes to FIS 301.071 concerning Moose Hunter Diaries.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
Thank you. Moving on, I make a motion to support changes to FIS 301.08 moose registration at biological check stations.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
I make a motion to readopt FIS 303.05 Bobcat regarding the Bobcat season.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Thank you.
Is there a second?
She made a motion.
I made the motion.
Oh, you made the motion, he made the second?
Yeah.
I thought he made the motion.
I thought it was the doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Any discussion on the motion?
If I could, to readopt as written, which says there shall be no open season for the taking of bobcat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
I make a motion to support FIS 303.08 annual trappers report changes.
I'll second it.
You heard the motion, you heard the second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
I make a motion to support staff changes to FIS 303.12 restrictions on certain traps.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
I make a motion to support staff recommended changes to FIS 303.13 award of trapping permits for state managed lands.
I'll second it.
You heard the motion on FIS 303.13. Any further discussion?
If I may, and Commissioner Price, we're moving through this quickly, thank you for that. Just to clarify, we're saying changes. The changes are just inserting links to information, but fundamentally, there's no changes to the content of the rules. I just wanted to highlight that for those that weren't part of our discussions earlier.
Any further discussion?
Well,
What's that?
all right, never mind. I got off the rhythm there. You were in a rhythm.
You're doing great, sorry.
Okay, now we just need a
We have a motion and we have a second.
Yeah,
Okay.
we could call him
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved.
Thank you. Moving on, where I make a motion to readopt with amendment FIS 308.03 trapping restrictions.
I'll second it.
You heard the motion, any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved.
I make a motion to readopt with amendment FIS 310, control of black bear human conflicts.
I'll second it.
You heard the motion, any further discussion? And none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved.
I make a motion that we readopt amendment FIS 311.02, licensing for use of leash tracking dogs.
I'll second it.
You heard the motion, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved.
I recommend that we support staff edits on FIS 311.03, use of leash dogs for tracking big game animals.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved.
And we're on the very last one. I make a motion that we readopt with amendment FIS 1102.07, bear guide tags.
I'll second it.
You heard the motion, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved.
Thank you. I have one final item. Marty, can you refresh my memory? What's the bill number for the lobster? No, the lobster.
1029.
It was 1029. Thank you. So,
Yes.
Sorry.
House bill, sorry, House bill.
House Bill 1029. So, this is a little odd the way we did this, wasn't it? I'll make a motion for discussion purposes to support suggested staff, New Hampshire Fish and Game staff language to create a lobster landing permit for recreational use. Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
What'll happen is we're gonna suggest this language. So what I would suggest is that the motion be that the commission supports the creation of a non-commercial landing license.
Okay.
And then, however,
Yeah.
it'll play out.
Okay, yeah, I would just like to get it open to
Is that
discussion
where
because
you- yeah, okay.
Jim was on, our sequence commissioner was not available this morning. So,
Creation of a,
Non-commercial landing license.
thank you.
so I make a motion that the commission consider staff's recommendation to create a non-commercial lobster landing license.
I'll second it.
Crab tip.
No, we haven't.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner Green.
You're saying on staff recommendation, what is the recommendation to make the changes to?
House Bill 1029.
Okay.
Well, we don't know what the bill will be that he'll attach it to, we have no
Oh,
control
okay.
over that.
He's not gonna, I thought he was gonna try to put this into
That's what
a form
she
of-
suggested,
Okay.
but what I'm saying is we don't know which method he'll use.
Okay.
I don't know whether he'll put it on a House bill, or whether he'll talk to a senator and get a senator to put it on a Senate bill.
Okay.
So I can't give you a bill number.
So, should we have our Seacoast Commissioner, I did get him right when he came in.
Oh, absolutely.
The language. Do you have that?
I have it here, and I read through 1 and 2, and I didn't have any issue with those, but I did have an issue with paragraph 3. I didn't feel like there would be any way that could be enforced.
Should we maybe hear from law enforcement on that?
Excuse me?
Should we hear from law enforcement on that, because it's an enforcement issue?
Sure.
So, the enforcement of that would be similar to what we do now for bear dog reciprocity. We do it for youth hunting. It's a little more difficult, sir, but it's not impossible to do that, to enforce it. So you would be checking the residency of the person that's using that, and you would compare that to the ability to fish in their state, if they were non-residents. Very similar to how we do bears now.
But this pertains to not fishing by trap, but by diving.
Correct. Correct. So you would be comparing the ability, and I'm doing it right from memory because I don't have the bill in front of me, but you would be comparing the ability to do that in their state, whether it was allowed in their state, if our residents were allowed to do that in their state.
So it only pertains to Massachusetts.
That's correct. That's correct. I think that was the goal of that.
Mr. Green?
Wasn't that in reference to during the hearing, there was talk of if somebody was diving in Massachusetts from a boat and coming up, and they're a resident of New Hampshire,
Correct.
and they come up into New Hampshire, there's the landing.
That's correct.
Because if they were diving in Massachusetts and threw it in their car, there's no landing in New Hampshire, correct?
That's correct.
So this was by boat. If a resident of New Hampshire were to dive for lobsters in Mass, and bringing the lobsters up to land in New Hampshire. Correct?
That's correct. That's the way I remember it.
And their argument was over the non-resident fee.
Correct. It was a high fee, they felt,
Yeah.
for someone bringing lobsters back. Well, you were the commissioner.
Yeah, I did think the fee was the only thing in question.
It was. That piece was added by our Marine Fisheries Chief, and I think her feeling was that that would be a fairer way of mandating.
So I felt that the law, as it was originally written, was fine.
Yeah.
The only thing in question was the fee.
Right.
And so why not just make an adjustment to whatever the fee schedule was and leave the law as it was originally written?
We're open to whatever.
We can't issue, we don't have the legal authority to issue a non-commercial landing license. So we'd only be able to, right now, I only have authority to issue, a commercial landing license, not non-commercial. So the only thing, these guys, they're stuck with a $500 landing license right now. So all that this does, other than item 3, item 2 allows us to issue a non-commercial landing license. So that's really what we're gonna get across.
Right. So I don't understand why we need paragraph 3 then.
You don't need it to do what we gotta get done. All it does is it does force, the reciprocity issue back and forth. If you don't see that as an issue, I don't have a problem with it.
The reciprocity issue would be only viable if there was a legally allowed to dive for lobsters in New Hampshire.
No, It would be if you had, the way I'm reading this, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Right.
if you are a New Hampshire registered, let's say you're a New Hampshire resident, you tie your boat up in Massachusetts, and you have a scuba diving license to catch lobsters in Massachusetts, if they don't have a license, a landing, a non-commercial landing license for you to take those licenses to, tie your boat up, take them to your car and drive back to New Hampshire.
But I didn't believe a non-resident of New Hampshire could legally dive for lobsters in
I have
Massachusetts.
no idea on that.
Unless they own
$5,000.
$5,000
Correct.
worth of property in
That's
Massachusetts.
correct. That is my understanding.
So, a New Hampshire resident
So-
launching out a new report,
If we did this, if we added line 3, going through what we just went through with the bear hunters, we would not be able to offer us, this would not allow anybody to do what we're trying to do.
Not currently.
Because of that 5,000.
Right. They would have to own 5,000 acres
Yeah.
in
$5,000 worth of real estate.
real estate in Mass, yes, not acres. Right.
So, Renee, do you see any reason why we need that line 3? Where'd you go? Oh, there she is.
Have you seen it? Yeah. Yeah, Sherry sent it to me a little bit earlier. So line 3 was added, we had a discussion with law enforcement last week, and it's mostly enforcement that was requesting that to be added, but it's consistent with a lot of the reciprocity that we have in our other marine licenses. Was one of the reasons, and it's consistent with, we don't allow diving in New Hampshire currently, so allowing for extra enforcement, and enforcement can speak a little bit more to that if they'd like to. But just the enforceability of that can get tricky, especially if somebody was diving out in federal waters, for example, where there's no license required. And how do they enforce that when they're coming back into the state of New Hampshire? So those were the 2 primary concerns, is my understanding.
I'm just finding out a lieutenant asked for that, so that is not an issue, to be honest with you. So I would prefer that we address the fee part of it. I think that is the part that legislators had the issue with, and I can understand that. Because that part of it, I think, would be more difficult to enforce too. It's consistent with other marine licenses. I think it creates kind of a unique set of circumstances with diving, for the reasons that we've already stated. So we're good either way.
because during the hearing, there was the conversations about folks diving in federal waters for lobsters. Do we know how many people are exploiting diving for lobsters in federal waters? Because it's pretty damn deep out there. I don't see people risking their lives just to go recreationally diving for lobsters in a couple hundred feet of water.
A lot of diesel to get out there.
Pardon me?
A lot of diesel to get out there too, as a recreational.
Right.
There's not a lot doing that, but you guys can see that. No. We're not seeing that. There's a couple of places, as you know, off the Isles of Shoals where that could be done, but there aren't a lot of
You have to
people.
be beyond 3 miles from the Isles of Shoals.
I think it was the
And all the
reason,
water out there is in excess of 200 feet.
right. I think there was a reason for that information to be provided in that hearing, but I think it more pertained to people in Mass that were coming back up here.
Mr. Howard?
So if you created a non-resident recreational landing permit without any of the reciprocity clarification, somebody who legally dove and caught lobster in Mass could land those in New Hampshire?
That's correct. And that was the issue that was pertinent at the hearing.
Any further discussion on the motion? The motion is to,
Support
way
the
out a
creation-
number, what is it?
Support the creation of non-commercial landing license,
Period.
period.
Any further discussion on that motion?
Do we need to add anything about without reciprocity, or that would be captured, Scott, in how this is worked?
Just get captioned.
Okay, I'll stand it.
What's reciprocity? We don't have.
I don't like that
Oh,
section.
yeah.
No, so I
Get
just
that
wanted
right
to.
out of there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, I'm aligned.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand opposed.
So ends my report.
Thank you. Governance Committee. Commissioner Caven.
Nothing to report.
All right, Sustainability and Strategic Planning. Commissioner Hodgson.
Yep, my report is that on March 8th at 3 p.m. we'll have our next committee meeting. And I'll work with Tanya to get official public notice out.
Resources and Infrastructure. Commissioner Green.
We didn't have a meeting, we didn't do a site visit, we all got COVID.
Thank you. Public Engagement and Education. Commissioner DeRosa.
I want to make a motion to support this document that we have been working on. We originally shared it last commission meeting. I followed up by email as well to make sure that everybody had gotten it. The only change that has been made since then is under the creation of subcommittees. And it reads now, the commission chair assigns committee chairs and committee members annually. Originally, it did not say and committee members. Other than that, this document is exactly the same from when we shared it a month ago. So I'd like a motion that we push this document forward to hopefully get it up on the website, to go over to Scott in its final form. That was the, what you had emailed me on that, Eric.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion, we accept the document as written and brought forward today.
Is there a second?
I made the motion, he's the second, I believe.
You said you would entertain a motion.
All right, I will second his motion.
You heard the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and approved.
Thank you. Also, we received all our stuff for the awards. If anybody else has anything on that, please let us know. We'll probably be setting up a meeting just before the next regular scheduled meeting to start going over that information.
Okay. Thank you. SECO Committee report. Commissioner Control.
Right. I have a couple items here. I believe that the addendum for the striped bass addendum was approved with the goal of rebuilding the striped bass stock by 2029. So from this period going forward, the acceptable length of striped bass between 28 and 31 inches, and we be allowed 1 fish per day. I have a note here that there was also a draft addendum to the American Lobster Plan to standardize the measure for the lobster gauge increase that's going to be implemented for all U.S. lobster fishes next January 1st, 3 5/16, because right now the Canadians have no plans of increasing their gauge size, so this will be tried to standardize the measure for lobsters being imported into the country. Right now, I believe it's a Mitchell amendment or addendum to the Magnuson-Stevenson Act saying that lobsters cannot be imported unless they conform with the size, legal size limit for U.S. lobsters. So there's some concern that without the Canadian lobsters coming down here, some of the processors won't have enough product to get food without those Canadian lobsters, so I don't know what they're going to do about that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Lakes Management Advisory Committee, Commissioner Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did not meet. I anticipate we may meet within the next 30 to 60 days, but nothing's been scheduled.
Thank you. Hampshire Rivers Management Advisory Committee, Commissioner Hodgson.
So the committee met in late January for the purpose of developing policy positions on pending legislation. All the bills that they took a position on that we have taken positions on, they agreed with our recommendation with the exception of Senate Bill 533, I think, Marty, keep me honest, which deals with public meetings. You may recall that this commission voted to oppose it over the concern that in-person participation in meetings was advantageous and beneficial, and the Rivers Management Committee voted to support it. So other than that one bill, all their positions are in alignment with that of the Officiating Commission. And I don't have an update on where that bill is. Perhaps you do.
It's a relative to physical quorums at public meetings.
Correct.
It allows somebody that is joining virtually to count towards the quorum. A member of the body can join virtually and count towards the quorum.
So that is my report. And then there'll be another meeting in April. I don't have a date yet.
Okay, thank you. Search Committee, Commissioner Hogg.
Thank you. The search committee for the executive director met on January 30th. We do not have another meeting scheduled at this time, so the first order of business I'd like to do is just ask the committee to approve the draft minutes that I shared.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the job description of just.
I'm going to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want to approve the minutes.
I can't do the minutes.
You can't do that, you weren't.
I'll make a motion that we approve the draft 1/30/2024 meeting minutes of the search committee.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Will I have a copy of those to house with the rest of the committee minutes?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep, give those to
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Green? Oh, we, during that meeting, we also finalized the job description. So I abbreviate that JD for job description. The official state language is SJD, standardized job description. Supplemental. Oh, thank you.
Yes, and I make a motion that the job description gets posted and we're moving on.
Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I am.
Okay.
Primarily because under the preferred qualifications, I just feel that we should be a bit more detailed about, because, you know, commissioners, there's a whole list of, you know, areas. One, you have to have a concentration in either educational or professional experience, and I think I'd just like to see those listed, you know, those areas of study that are also relative to the commission. It seems like the commission, we should expect our executive director to have some background in one of the fields that we're supposed to have to become a commissioner. And it's a comprehensive list. That's the reason was sort of taking a shortcut to the RSA, that list has already been prepared.
Okay. So in the job description, there is a section called required qualifications. We do reference RSA 206(8). We wanted to highlight and call attention to the fact that there is statutory requirements for executive director. The committee did have extensive discussion over what and how to capture. And so ultimately, the job description reflects the discussion of the goal and desire for the executive director, above all, to be a strong administrator and leader, and rely on the subject matter expertise of the chiefs of the 7 divisions. So that was prioritized as a strong leader and administrator with being able to support and lead with the subject matter expertise of the chiefs of the divisions. So I welcome the committee to help answer that if I didn't capture that correctly. Okay. All right, thank you for the feedback, Commissioner Price. And with that, the vote passes 9-1, and I will work with D and Department Personnel to get this posted. Is that my goals before the end of the month?
Okay, thank you. Okay, Old business.
Yes, I have
Commissioner Casey, you're on board.
Thank you. With respect to previous discussions, we've had brief discussions regarding the Swansea Lake issue and the potential to maybe examine conflicts of use of that very small lake, designated trout water, and slalom courses. I have been in discussions with Attorney Lucas regarding putting together a letter that the chair could sign and make an appeal to the Marine Division to basically just engage in a discussion with New Hampshire Fish and Game and explore the idea that maybe, using Swansea Lake as the example, that there should be a little more discussion before permits are just granted for this sort of activity in the future, especially looking at small bodies of water. And again, to repeat what I've said several times before, Swansea Lake is only about 106 acres. 2 summer camps, campground that's going under expansion, seasonal as well as year-round properties on this small lake. And on a sunny day in July, it's very, very busy. So it's only reaching out in hopes to just engage 2 agencies into a discussion. Not trying to light a fire on turf battles here, but just engaging in a joint discussion. So I have a copy of the letter. It has my signature on it, or my name, but I'm going to ask that it be changed and have the chair's signature on it. So I'd like to pass it out, if I could.
Please.
Pass it. Whoops.
I got you back.
Thank you, sir. You're fine. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this letter reference Swansea Lake and have the letter signed by the chairman of the commission and sent out.
Okay.
You heard the motion. Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to do this today, respectfully.
Well, it would have to be retyped.
We have a word version
Unless
upstairs.
somebody's clever.
Copy and paste, sir.
There's a Word version upstairs, and we can just change from my name to yours.
Oh,
How's that?
sounds good, sir. They can do it, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Thank you.
In other words, don't take off, just stick around for your signature.
Yes, sir.
It's also recommended to change fisher persons to anglers on the last paragraph. I can't take credit for that one.
Fisher persons.
Anglers.
Anglers.
What?
Anglers.
Jeez.
Scott, that wasn't me.
Why not? I don't know. Any further discussion on the motion? The motion was agreeable to change Fisher persons to anglers. Whatever. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying, oh.
Just, if I could interrupt, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, 2 quick questions. You said Marine Division, but I'm assuming you mean Marine Patrol.
Marine Patrol, I'm sorry.
That's good. And then the second question is the invite for discussion involve law enforcement or the commission?
Commission.
Doesn't matter to me as long as I know.
This building and the commission should engage in the discussion with Marine Patrol.
That's perfect.
And for me, I'm gonna take it one step further, it should involve yourself.
It would if you do it that way. Yes.
All right?
Yeah, that's
The
good.
director, but also Diane.
Diane,
Still in the
that was
building.
that was my thought.
There you are.
Fisheries.
Definitely.
Yep, good. Perfect, thank you.
So, yes.
Sorry.
Okay. You've heard the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Stands approved. New business. Anybody got any new business? Go. Commissioner Green.
Just wanted to make an announcement for Point of Fish and Game. That Point of Fish and Game is having a banquet on April 18th at 6 o'clock p.m. And it's going to be held at the Budweiser plant in Merrimack. And the whole commission is entitled, the whole commission is invited to attend. And Buck Mercia should be getting tickets to your next month's meeting.
April 16th?
April 18th, at 6 o'clock p.m., Merrimack, New Hampshire. You know where that is going?
Look for the big red building.
That's down south from you.
I'll jump in the canoe and I'll meet you there.
Good idea, goes right by it.
Any other new business? Seeing none. Commissioner's report. Commissioner's report on their recent activities as it relates to Fish and Game Commission duties and responsibilities. It's an informational item only. Any commissioners got anything? Commissioner DeRosa?
Yeah, I met with Hackle and Tackle, which is an organization over in Stratford County. I met in Rochester. I got to spend the night with Ellis Hatch's son, which was pretty cool. And I got to watch some slides from the Trophy stretch up in your neck of the woods that were from before I was born, which was pretty interesting. Included some great photos of grouse. But it was really cool to kind of see it all in action. They meet, I guess it's once a month. It was about 30 people exchanging fly fishing gear, and the general concern was our situation of our hatcheries, some questions around the camera and tree stand bill, but overall, generally happy with everything the department's up to. So.
I have one. Two items.
Right.
Thank you. You meet the nicest people at House hearing meetings. I ran into a former New Hampshire Fish and Game biologist, Steve Wheeler. Maybe some people know him. In his retirement, he spends his own money on something called the American Kestrel Project, nesting boxes. And when I told him we had kestrels in my part of Waltonboro, he became very interested, and I am going to introduce him to neighbors who have own proper habitat, and they will be allowing him to put these nesting boxes on their property to encourage more kestrel breeding, nesting. I handled a complaint out of Freedom that is actually being addressed by C.O. Lewis. A lady was complaining that her neighbor's feeding the deer, which is legal this time of year, but this is causing the deer to come and eat her plants on her property. So she said she had spoken to a biologist here. When I asked who it was, she said she could not remember the person's name. And I asked her if C.O. Lewis had any success with the neighbor, and she said, well, she hadn't talked to him. So that's the status. She seems to have calmed down. She was quite hot a couple weeks ago about the deer eating her flowers, shrubs. So, typical day of the life. Maybe we ought to put that on this thing, on the day of the life of the commissioner. That's it.
Commissioner?
Yeah, Eric, I had one question. I know we've had the presentation on the fish hatcheries, and there's going to be another presentation coming up publicly, I think I read somewhere. Has the New Hampshire Buildings or Public Works group, have they selected the construction manager yet?
No, but I'll have that in my report.
Good, thank you.
Any more commissioners to address? Okay, director's report.
Okay, we have just hired our new DOIT lead person. She just started, her name is Doris McCall. She's gonna be part-time with Fish and Game, and we're gonna be splitting her 50-50 Fish and Game and the States Veterans Hospital. And today is not the day, she's not at Fish and Game on Tuesday, she's not scheduled to be here. So eventually I'm sure you'll meet her, but in between, as I say, we split her, so she's here sometimes and not others. We're hoping that the role she'll play is to help organize our DOIT staff as well as our projects here. And as I think you're all well aware, we have multiple DOIT improvement projects going on right now. And we think this person will be key to helping us move through some of these updates that we're doing. Governor has nominated Pat McGonigal to represent Belknap County on the commission. The council has not voted on Pat yet, but the governor did make that nomination at the last meeting. Diane and I have been presenting the hatchery modernization project presentation that you guys saw here, and also at the council meeting. I think most of you folks had a chance to see it there. But we have been presenting that to different legislative committees, sportsmen's groups, and our scheduled 2 public meetings. One will be here at headquarters on February 27th at 6 p.m. The other one will be up at Region 1 on March 5th at 6 p.m. Public Works has put the RFQ out for the contract managers, and we are going through that process. And as I think you folks are all well aware, this is because the project's over $500,000, Public Works is actually managing the project for us. Spoke with the Coas County Administrator and a County Commissioner up in Coas. Currently, Coas has multiple unincorporated townships where the county administers those townships. And somewhere along the line, they, in their zoning ordinances, which is a little different, doing a tree cut in most towns, it's a selectmen's issue here. The planning board plays a role in it. They have zoning ordinances that protect deer yards, brook trout habitat, and other types of wildlife habitat. They are looking at changing some of those ordinances, and we will be working with them as they move through that process. Had a meeting the other night with the New Hampshire Rough Grouse Society. They are a member of the national chapter. The organization that disbanded a few years ago. These folks are putting it back together. I believe they've been up and running for about 2 years. Also met with the New Hampshire Guides Association and the New Hampshire Department of Tourism. The New Hampshire Department of Tourism is expressed an interest in working with promoting our guides as part of their state promotion, tourism promotion program. So. The other thing that will impact you folks is, and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I signed off on a $3,000 increase for the travel for the year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we increased the travel line item. We're requesting to take $3,000 out of the Fish and Game Fund to add to the commission's travel budget line item, because you folks are rapidly running out of money. And that will be for this year only, that 3,000.
Yes,
We'll be
it will.
sure to get it next year. And this is after we already increased the line by,
We increased this biennial budget by $2,000 each year. And it's added to my budget tickler, which I have going already, to increase it for the next biennium.
so that's my report. Did that answer your question as far as?
Yeah.
And that recess in June first.
Yes, end of June.
Ended.
Yeah.
Fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Call to the public. Anybody wish to address the commission? If you do, please come up to the podium and state your name and what you wish to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm up here for a couple of reasons today. First off, back in the first of the month, let me state my name for the record. Gino Marconi, and I'm the chairman of the Advisory Committee on Marine Fisheries, and I've been here before when certain subjects come up. When I was here last, there was some discussion about the harvesting of surf clams along the seacoast area. I said to you I would report back to you as something developed. The committee met a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately, Sunday night when I came back from vacation, I caught the dreaded airline disease, and I was unable to attend the meeting on Monday. At that meeting, there was a motion made to recommend to this commission a closure of the harvested sea clams from the 15th of February to the 15th of May. I was not there, I could not vote on it. It passed with 4 votes in favor of it, 1 abstention. But I exercised my rights as a citizen, and I wrote an opposing dissension opinion of that subject. And I brought it up here today, and I gave it to the director so that he could provide you with it. The day after that vote from that meeting, as you know, my real job is that I'm the director of the Port Authority, and I manage 3 commercial fish piers, Hampton, Ryan, Portsmouth. My phone was ringing off, people coming into my office. What do I do? How can I address this? And I told them, I said, listen, write a letter to the commission, to the director. Then someone came in and said, you know, well, we don't write letters. What would happen if we put a petition together? And I've been around government long enough to know that petitions work, to get your opinions out there. For the sake of full disclosure, a couple of these guys said, well, we don't know how to do it. Would you write one up for us? Would we tell you what we want? So I did type that petition. Before I came up here this morning, there were at least six guys came into my office at the port and handed me those stacks of petitions that, again, I gave to the director for your consideration. So I'll let the Chief of Marine Fisheries give the report to you when she returns on what happened at that meeting. I wasn't there, and I'm not going to speak to it, but I just wanted you to know that I wrote this dissent opinion, and I felt it important enough for me to come up here today and present it to you in person. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody got any questions of Mr. McCollum?
The presentation as far as what they.
The recommendation that came from ASMFC.
I have not asked when she's from.
Okay. I just share that because we have a petition, but we haven't been, just for their knowledge, we've not been presented with us to make that decision.
I have a question for Mr. McCooney. Did this kind of come out of the blue? Or has this been did this come out of the blue, or had this been an issue that the people wanting to restrict the season, had they been asking for this for a number of years, or did this just pop up off the radar, so to speak?
My opinion is to pop the radar. In fact, if I may, Mr. Chairman, The owner of the clam boat sitting here, he thought it was important enough for him to come up to witness these proceedings today. As I reported it the last time I was up here, they had been, which was last year at this time, they've been harvesting sea clams for over 2 years. And the first I heard of it at my committee was when one of my committee members and a local lobster fisherman came in and brought the subject up. So we've been talking about this over the course of the last year. Cherie and I have been doing some research on it. I've been looking at some of the mechanics of how this fishery has occurred. Cherie's been looking at the biology of it, the clams themselves, and of particular note, winter flounders. We've been talking about this and talking about this, and then, as I said at the last meeting, there were at least 2 motions I'm informed that were made. One motion failed, and then the second motion was this 12-week, 52-week closure of the fishery.
Yep.
So, could we get copies of that meeting, the minutes for the meeting you missed? The one where all this occurred? I think it would help us.
Yeah. I'm trying to think now under RSA 91A. Under 91A, if this, we have to produce draft minutes of the meeting within so many hours or so many days.
5 days.
5 days.
We've been schooled recently.
Yeah. I get reminded of it all the time. So we could provide you with a draft copy. They will be approved, amended, or whatever at the next meeting of the committee, which will be the 1st of the month. So I will, I'll ask the administrative assistant of the court volunteers her time to do the minutes, so I'll have her send those up. I'll send them to the director of the administrator. Yes.
What is the goal of closing the 12, for the 12 weeks? Is it to stop the fishing? Is it to collect more information? What's the goal of the 12-week, the proposed 12-week closure?
I raised that question in my memo.
Okay.
I don't know what the purpose of it is. Again, this is my personal opinion. I don't see any reason for the closure. I don't see the impacts that have been alleged to occur with this fishery. I put it in pretty good detail towards the end of the thing where I actually did the math of how long the dredge is in the water, how fast they tow it, how far they go, how many sets a day they make, and I boiled it down to their impacts is about 20% of an acre when they go fishing.
The last time you were here, didn't you and Cherie both agree that this is not a biological issue here?
I agree with Cherie, she's the scientist, I'm just an old boat driver, so I'll leave it.
Yeah, right. Commissioner Zotto.
At that meeting, the closure period was a period of concern, was when he said it was the spawning period for the winter flounder. And the winter flounder, I guess, stock is in not good shape, and they felt that they didn't want to jeopardize the spawning procedures going on with the winter flounder, and so that's why they decided upon that time period.
Any further questions of Mr. McCollum? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as always, I appreciate the opportunity to come up here. Commissioners, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure to have you. Anyone else wish to address the commission? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm Julia Sinclair from Newmarket, New Hampshire. So as you know, I'm always transparent with constructive criticism. So I also want to be transparent when I see good things happening. So I want to thank you, Commissioner John, is it Cavaney? Is that how you pronounce it? I want to thank you for being willing to write that letter, to be open to engaging in a discussion with people that don't necessarily agree with the way that the commission would normally go along with, so I want to thank you for that. And the other question I had was, I can't help but notice, this is nothing against the commission, it's against all of us in the public. I can't help but notice that there's been like 14 snowmobile accidents since February 1st with some fatalities, as well as a number of hiking rescues and attempted rescues. It seems like a lot more than normal on both of those fronts. And I was just wondering if there's anything that's being done in terms of action items to help educate the public or something, anything, to like stop the craziness. I don't know, even though I don't even know who to ask.
Yeah, I can answer that for you. So I'm gonna post guards at the border and keep everybody out of New Hampshire?
Okay, there you go.
Actually, that's not the case. So a couple of things, very, very good observation. I don't know that it's higher, but what happens in a low snow year is we concentrate people in a very small, reduced area with smaller snow amounts. And believe it or not, when you have smaller snow amounts, your injury rate goes up and your fatalities go up. And I don't know this, but I think it has a direct correlation to the snow cover when people impact on a sled. So anytime anyone has an accident on a snow machine, there's an ejection. And we have years of good snow cover, we have less injury than we do in years like this when there is no snow cover. Both of the recent fatalities that we had were sad, both of them. Anytime it's a fatality, it's sad. One was a mother of 2 small children. Another one was a wife with a husband on the back of the sled at the time of the fatality, which was tragic. Both on rented sleds, which I think is interesting. Both involved inexperienced riders. The director and I were discussing what, if anything, we can do about that. It's a challenge. We have proposed some legislation in the past which hasn't passed. We don't disagree with you, but we think some things should be done in that regard. So more to follow. But this type of snow cover makes me nervous because I've seen it year after year after year. Search and rescue, I don't think that's going away. I think the more that cell coverage increases, the more calls we're going to get. You know, we get calls now when people are cold, which is what happened literally Saturday night, was an individual got cold and called for a whole different reason, but at the end of the night, that's all it was he was hypothermic. So I think as these cell coverage opportunities present themselves and people are out, we're going to get called more and more. We do work pretty hard, as you know, to educate people, trying to. It's difficult, and it's very difficult. The director sent me an email over the weekend, which was solidly on point to this, and it was an article out of a hiking magazine where they're talking about carrying a 3-ounce or 3-pound pack, and in the wintertime. And of course, that's suicide. That's what's killing these people. They don't have any gear with them. The pack I used to carry, if you saw the Channel 9 News coverage Saturday night or Sunday, they talked to which I really appreciated, because they talked to the Cog Railway operators, which did a heroic effort for us, and it was good that they got credit for that. But in one shot, you saw a CO ducking into the train for just a few seconds, and I wish it had been a little bit longer, because the pack he was carrying was close to the size of a VW. And that's really the pack that's required in the winter months. You gotta have snowshoes, you gotta have extra gear, you gotta have a bivy bag, so when you get cold, like this individual did on Saturday night, he can self-rescue. But when we have articles promoting trail running, you know, light packs and those kinds of things, you're gonna have people get in trouble. So, and someone does it once and gets away with it, and they think that it's okay to promote that, and it's not. They were very fortunate, and I can give you 100 examples of people who didn't get away with it. So we're trying.
Now, just out of curiosity, are these crazy, like hikers, are they gonna get charged?
Well, I didn't say they were crazy.
I didn't.
Yeah. Yes, so if they are negligent, if we can prove that they are negligent, we review that, the on-scene commander does, that comes to headquarters, the command staff reviews it, if we concur, we forward it over to the Attorney General's office, we have Attorney Aslan looks at it, who's very good at this. very fair, and he makes a determination, he agrees with all of us, then we send the bill, and we're still doing that.
Yeah.
That's being done. The problem is the payment record isn't high. I asked for the legislature to give me the authority to suspend their license, which is what they wrote in the legislation. They failed to do that. So I don't have a tool other than to say, I really want you to pay your bill. We don't have a tool to collect that, but at least we're billing some, we're using it as an advertising tool to discourage that behavior, but yes, we are billing those folks.
How about,
Fatalities, we don't. I've never
Yeah.
billed a fatality.
how about like garnishment on people's paychecks?
Colonel, I'll remind you that we're not supposed to interact with the public while they're making statements.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't
Remember the rules, Colonel.
We can maybe talk afterwards.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't stop it, he can.
Oh.
I had a time limit too.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Executive Director, members of the commission. Great fisheries discussions today, so that's why you're seeing my face. Mink Brook. I will have this picture with me until the day I'm dead and gone. My grandson caught his first wild brook trout in Mink Brook. So I will tell you that the claims by fisheries that it's a robust wild brook trout fishery are true, and we really do need to spend the money to get that piece of property and protect that watershed. Conversely, when it comes to dams, I'd like to see a little more questioning on why we keep paying year after year for what I'll call deadbeat dams. I mean, I looked at the list today, and there's a half a dozen of those dams that need to be removed. And so if we're really concerned about spending money from the Habitat Fund, one of the places we can stop wasting money is paying for all these dams that Fish and Game is responsible for. Thank you.
Yes, Kathy?
If I may just add a couple things about the Fisheries Habitat account. You may not know, but the Fisheries Habitat account by statute is an interest-bearing account or interest-earning account. And I can guarantee you, with the interest rates being as robust as they are right now, we will earn in interest in that account what you approved today to spend for seasonal help. And that is also added to my budget tickler to make sure that that class line is also properly funded going into the next biennium. Thank you.
Yeah, what was it, 900,000 in it or something like that?
Yes, so that actually earns a nice interest, and we have 3 other interest-bearing accounts as well.
Yep. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.